Welcome to Spooky Ass Shit. I am your host, Eric Winnells, and I am joined once again via Skype by my old pal, Emily Ferguson. Hello, Emily.
Heyo. Glad to be back.
Now, I've teased this episode a little bit on my Instagram. I did a video talking about the history of the hatchet in Massachusetts. And this story tonight involves a hatchet.
Oh man, that's the one we're going to talk about? I have no idea what's going on. I'm really excited.
Yeah, now normally I tell Emily what we're covering before we speak. I think Brian Tony is really the only one who doesn't like to have any clue what we're going to talk about before he comes on. And this is kind of a serious story. Like it's very interesting. It's batshit crazy, but it's not cute and it's not
Bugs
funny.
Bunny?
No, it's not Bugs Bunny. It's not Chicken McNuggets. Nothing like that. So normally this is the kind of episode I might do like with Brian, like not Tom because he makes too many jokes. And usually not like you or Fatima or Jenny Blades, maybe Jenny Blades.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
Usually I kind of save the kind of goofy stories for you because we're kind of goofy people and that's kind of our vibe together.
Totally.
But Brian complained. Maybe I shouldn't say complained, but he pointed out that he was getting a lot of like the darker stories, and he was like, "Can't we talk about like funny shit sometimes?" But I wanted someone who I thought would enjoy is maybe not the right word, but get something out of this episode. Fatima, for example, very squeamish as far as paranormal and just she's squeamish.
Sure, fair.
So I thought maybe this wouldn't be a good one.
Well, I'm a very big reactor, so
yeah. Well, this story will have this one will have a lot for you to react to. Awesome. So I was telling Emily, normally I have like 3 or 4 pages of notes per episode. I have 8 pages on this one. So this might even end up being a 2-parter. And I would say like tonight we're going to talk about whatever. I'm not even going to do that for this one because I don't want to spoil anything. I want you to take this journey, Emily.
All right.
And the listeners.
Hopefully.
Because this case is like, it's not unknown, but it's not that famous. And you're really going to wonder why when we get to the end. This is something that should be hugely well known.
Special and competing crime one,
especially here because it is a Massachusetts story. All right, so enough of that. Let me just plug the website real quick and then we'll get on with the show. The website is spookyas.com or spookyasshit.com. They both take you to the same place, and that is the show's blog page. I almost got it out. From there you can listen to almost every episode, including the ones no longer available on your favorite streaming service. And you can also find links to our social media. We are at Spooky Ass Shit on Instagram, and you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/spookyas. While you're there, don't forget to join our secret closed group, the Spookaroos, where you can talk about all kinds of creepy things without the weight of public judgment upon you. All right, Emily.
Yep.
The following is mostly a true story. And I say that because I'm culling this from many sources, and I don't know which ones are the most accurate.
Oh, so there's a little bit of contradiction among them.
I first learned of this story, I don't know if this might be the very first time I ever heard of it, from a show called Your Worst Nightmare.
Oh my God.
And it's streaming now on Hulu. And this is season 2, episode 1. And it's called something like Bumps in the Night or Things That Go Bump in the Night. I think it's Bumps in the Night. Oof. And I was watching it and I said, "What? This can't be a true story," because I would have heard about this.
Yeah.
And it is a true story, but it didn't seem to have happened exactly the way it's portrayed on the show. Looking at the news reports, which by the way, I had access to, thank you to the Minuteman Library Network. Awesome. Which allows you to go online and dig through old newspapers and stuff like that you wouldn't normally have access to. Not for free anyway. So thank you very much to the Minuteman Library Network. Shout out to you guys. So I pulled my sources from these newspapers, which also contradict each other on usually the big details are the same, but the little details might be different. And a lot of them don't even mention some of the things that are mentioned on the show. However, on the show, they interviewed the original investigator, the family's that's involved lawyer and stuff. So why would they be making stuff up? So all that said, especially this first part, take it with a grain of salt and we'll see what happens.
Okay.
All right. So our story takes place in 1986. That's where it starts. There is a family that is grieving the loss of the mother of the family. This is the Bowden family of Pepperell, Massachusetts.
Oh.
And Frank Bowden is the father, and he has two daughters, Tina and Karen. They're called by different names on the show, so I don't know which one is which, but we're going to assume that Tina is the older daughter and Karen is the younger daughter.
Okay.
So their mother passed away after a battle with cancer, and the girls are, I think Tina, they don't say exactly, but she's probably like around 15, 16, something like that.
Okay.
And then the younger one is probably more like 11 or 12.
All right.
And Frank Bowden is now a single father trying to raise these two daughters. But he works as a truck driver, and he works long days, and sometimes he doesn't get home till late at night. But, you know, he's got a teenage girl in the house, so she can kind of babysit the younger one, and the younger one's not that young, so, like, you know, it's all good. Yeah. And the neighbors are aware, and they, you know, are friendly with their neighbors and everything, so...
That's a little small town.
Yeah. So everything's going, like, pretty much okay, except, of course, they're having a hard time dealing with the mother, but... the death of the mother. But then the daughter, Tina, the older daughter, she starts like a phone relationship because, you know, this was obviously long before the internet and people couldn't slide into your DMs or anything. Sure. But she was getting like cold calls from a teenage boy. Okay. And the boy was like, oh, hey, my name's Danny. I got your number from whatever mutual friend. I live, you know, town over in Townsend, Massachusetts. And, you know, I've seen you around, and I thought you were really pretty, so I asked my friend for your number, and he got it for me. How you doing? Plausible. And they start talking on the phone, and things are going pretty well. And like Tina's like feeling pretty lucky because she's talking to Danny, and Danny's like, yeah, I'm the captain of the football team, and you know, I'm like 6 feet tall, and I just broke up with my girlfriend, and so that's kind of rough. But I'm glad I saw you and I found you. And they start this whole like flirtatious relationship, and you know, on the show, the younger sister's giving her like a hard time, teasing her about it. So they finally make a date to meet up and go to this carnival together.
Okay.
And so she's like, yeah, Danny, that'd be great. Why don't you come pick me up at home and we'll go to this carnival. So, okay, she does. But when he gets to the door, as I'm sure you won't be too surprised to learn, he is not a 6 foot tall football star. Nope. He's like this like greasy, short, like kind of stocky looking, dirty looking guy.
Okay.
Like kind of just looks like a dirtbag, you know.
And guy by which age are we guessing?
No, he's a teenager.
Oh, he is
a teenager. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
He's like 16.
Okay.
And this is in October of 1986.
So this is a proto catfishing situation. I get you.
Yeah. He's like one of the original catfishers.
Very nice.
But she's like, well, I already said I'd go with him, and he seemed nice on the phone anyway, so,
right.
You know, maybe this will work out somehow, even though he seemed maybe not quite so truthful. But they go out and to get some ice cream, and while they're out, like, he keeps bringing up her dead mother. Like, he keeps asking about, like, oh, what's the deal with your mom? And, like, do you ever try to talk to her? Does she ever answer you? Okay. And she was, yeah, that's kind of the reaction that Tina had, too. She was like, all right, I'm all done with this guy. Yeah. And she actually was smart enough to like be like, you know what? We're all done.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, I'm going to go home. Like I don't need to be like nice to you. I'm just going to go. Like this is weird. You're not who you said you were. You're bringing up weird subjects. I'm going home.
Excellent. Harder than you would think to do as a teenage girl.
Right. So she goes home, and again, you know, lots of lonely nights without their dad around and missing their mom, right?
Right.
So the two girls decide, according to this TV program, that they're going to hold a seance.
Okay.
So they go down to the basement and they light all the candles. They've used like a Ouija board or whatever, and they're asking questions to their mother who's passed away.
Right.
And the Ouija board starts to answer just like you two teenage girls you would imagine
Sure.
get their answers, right?
Yeah.
But as they're doing this, their father comes home and like barges in and catches them. And he's like, "What are you guys doing?" And they're like, "Oh, nothing." And he's like, "Well, it doesn't look like nothing." But he's not like a jerk about it. He's just like, whatever it is, just stop it, clean it up, go to bed.
Okay.
So they're like, "Oh, okay." But this is when shit gets crazy.
Okay.
Because after this, the girls start to hear rapping on the wall.
Uh-huh.
And they think it's coming from the door, so they go to the door. This is when they're home alone again sometime,
Right.
And there's nobody at the door. And then they're like, maybe it's, coming from the basement. They go in the basement. There's nobody in the basement. Nothing in the basement. And they're like, oh, this is weird. And then they get the idea, like, maybe this is Mom. Maybe she's, like, haunting us.
Sure.
Yeah. So they're like, Mom, is that you? Knock once for yes and twice for no. And the knocks respond to the questions that the girls are asking. So they start to get a little freaked out, and they tell Dad about it. And Dad's like, look, girls, this has been really hard for all of us, and I understand that it's stressful and you might do these things, but, your mom is not haunting the house. She's not answering you.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, she is. And he's like, well, how come it doesn't happen when I'm home? Like, it only happens when you girls are home alone at night,
Uh-huh.
And he's like, I'm not saying you're lying about it, but whatever, it's not what you think it is. It's just an old house. It makes noise, whatever. Sure. But the girls are still like insisting, like, no, this happens. Like, we're not making this up. So again, couple days, weeks later, they hear more banging, but this time it sounds like it's coming from the pipes.
Okay.
So they're like, those pipes come from the basement. So like there must be something going on in the basement, which is where they had their seance.
Right.
So they head down to the basement with flashlight and all, and they don't see anybody. So they're like, oh, all right, there's nobody here. But then they turn around.
Nope.
And there is writing on the wall. In what appears to be blood.
What?
And the writing says, I'm here. Come find me.
Not
so
cool.
So the girls run out of the house.
Yeah.
And, they call their dad home from work from the neighbor's house or whatever. And he comes home and the girls are freaking out. And he's like, all right, girls, all right, relax.
Yeah.
So then he goes down to the basement and he says, oh, shit, there really is writing on the wall. So he calls the police.
Yep.
So the police department comes out and they go down to the basement with him. The police officer goes over to the wall and he says, this is ketchup.
Oh, my God.
And he says, I think the girls are just playing a prank on you here. Like, they want you to take them seriously. And the dad's like, yeah, probably. The death of their mom's been hard and
Sure.
They're probably just looking for attention and they want me to be home more often, that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
So he goes upstairs and he's talking to the girls and the girls are like, you don't believe that this is really happening? And he's like, well, girls, I'm going to schedule an appointment so you can talk to a psychologist and we'll get you guys some help to work through this kind of thing. And they're like, that's not what this is, Dad. Like, this is like real. We didn't do this. And the police are like, well, we searched the house. There's nobody else here. And you said, nobody else came out. So like it had to be you guys basically.
Right.
And so the girls agree to like kind of put a lid on it, but they're like, but Dad, just so you know, like we totally didn't do this.
Right.
And he's like, okay, girls. Okay. We're going to get some help. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So a couple days later, girls are home alone again. And they start to hear the knockings. And this time it seems to be coming from upstairs.
Oh my God.
So they start to go upstairs, and from the bottom of the stairs, they can see like into the older girl's bedroom.
Okay.
And they can see that because there's a mirror there.
Okay.
And they can see that written on the mirror, it says, "I'm in your room. Come find me."
Oh.
And the girls, of course, turn back downstairs,
Yeah.
and they're like, "No,
Okay.
we ain't doing this."
Nope.
But now on the TV show anyway, when they get back downstairs, there is a knife in the wall,
Ah.
and attached to it is a picture of the older girl.
What? This sounds completely insane.
Right.
Absurd is the word I'm looking for. Yeah. Okay.
So they run out of the house again.
Yep. Sure.
Go to the neighbors again. Call their dad home from work again. And the dad's probably like getting pissed because he's like, this is like second time in a week that they've called me home from work and whatever. So he pulls up, but this time the girls are like outside at the neighbor's house. And the neighbor's like, they're really freaking out.
Yeah.
But, like, they're really not okay.
But, like, actually freaking out, yeah.
Yeah. So, this is where stories diverge a little bit.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you what happens on the TV show.
All right.
And then we'll go back and talk about what was more likely what really happened.
Okay.
So on the TV show, the dad goes to the house by himself because the girls absolutely will not enter.
Sure.
So he goes around the house. So he opens the door. First of all the lights are on. All the TVs are on, full volume. And he's like, "Girls, did you do this?" And they're like, "No." And they're out in the yard, but, you know.
Yeah.
With the neighbor. And they're like, "No, Dad, we didn't do any of this shit." So he's like, "Okay, all right. So I'm going to go check the house." So he gets up. He goes upstairs to where they had seen the writing on the wall. And he opens the door. And this time, on the mirror, it says, "Will you marry me?"
Ew.
And he's not alone in the room.
Ew.
Because standing there with his back towards the door, so all the father can see of the back, is somebody wearing his dead wife's wedding dress.
The fuck?
And holding a hatchet.
What?
So Frank, the dad, freaks out.
Yo.
The person turns around, not only wearing a wedding dress, not only holding a hatchet, also has his face painted up.
Ew.
Like an Indian with war paint on.
I'm sorry. This is somebody's fever dream we're talking about here?
Right. So then this figure picks up the hatchet and is chasing Frank with it. Frank runs out the door, shuts it behind him, locks it, whatever.
Sure.
And tells the girls to run, and the neighbor to run. And they call the police and blah, blah, blah. Uh-huh. That's what happens on the TV show.
Okay.
In the news reports that I read, however, it's not that the girls were home alone when this final event took place. What happened was the girls and the dad were coming back from picking up the girl's friend, Kathleen. She was going to spend the night over the house.
Okay.
So they all were in the house.
All came in.
When they were confronted by this person dressed not in a wedding dress, but as an Indian.
What?
And wearing, you know, like I said, Indian war paint.
Uh-huh.
And brandishing a hatchet.
Okay. The writing on the mirror, that's maybe not. It's
not mentioned in any of the news stories.
Okay. And that would be pretty sensational, so I'm guessing that's embellished.
So, well, also the newspapers disagree on how he looked.
Okay.
We'll get to that later, though.
Well, yeah,
But the Bowdens run upstairs and lock themselves in one of the bedroom while this guy's out there trying to hatchet the door. They lock themselves in the room and they barricade the room.
Okay.
And then the father like rigs up one of those, like the old trick of like lowering a bed sheet down the window. And one of the girls is able to escape and call the police. The family stays in the locked bedroom.
Okay.
And when the police get there, there's nobody, you know, dressed in war paint or dressed like an Indian.
Sure.
In the house.
Nope.
So they they find the Bowden family and they let him out and they're like, yeah, everything's cool here. Like there's nobody here. And the Bowdens are like, well, fuck that shit, because somebody was here.
Yep.
And either wearing my wife's wedding dress or dressed like an Indian. Either way, creepy.
Pretty weird. Yep.
So we're going to bounce.
Yeah.
And basically we're never coming back here again. They actually moved to New Hampshire after all this. But at first they were just staying in a hotel somewhere else.
Okay.
And they never found this person, right?
Uh-huh.
But the father, Frank, they left in a hurry. And they left most of their stuff behind. So a couple days later, Frank goes back to the house to get some of the family's things.
Sure.
And when he enters, he noticed the house has been vandalized.
Sure. Fair.
There are knives stuck in the walls.
Okay, that's weird.
And the walls have all been smeared with ketchup and mustard and mayonnaise, like stuff that was lying around the house.
Okay.
He also sees that there are 2 glasses of wine set out, as if like someone's about to have a date or something.
Okay.
But they haven't been drank from. Like they're 2 full glasses of wine.
They're just sitting.
And rather than poking around, Frank's like, I'm just going to call the police.
Yep.
So he calls the police and he says, there's all kind of strange shit in my house. And, after what happened the other night and all, whatever. So the police come and they do a thorough search of the house. But this time they notice that there's a little doorway hidden in the basement.
What?
And it leads to a crawl space behind the dryer. And the officers, when they move the dryer, see someone sitting there.
Nope.
And so they tell him, come out with your hands up. And this person comes out.
Nope.
The family is asked if they recognize him. It turns out it's Danny.
It's the greasy little fucker.
The greasy little fucker. His name is Danny LaPlante.
Oh my God.
And this is his story.
Oh. Wow.
So he's arrested. And, he's a juvenile. So he's, instead of being taken to jail, he's taken to like juvenile, crazy people.
Sure.
Jail.
Right.
State hospital for, youthful offenders or whatever it was called.
Okay.
And he's going to await his trial there. It's not like adult jail where you'd get like bail and you could be out and all this stuff. Right. Like when you're a minor, they're like, you can't be, your family can't handle you. So we're going to take care of you
they're gonna keep
and take you away and all that stuff.
Fine.
So that is the story of Daniel LaPlante. But
I mean, is it?
We ain't done yet.
Okay.
Because there is a sequel to this story.
Wow, and how? How the fuck?
Okay, so all of that happened in December of 1986. We're going to fast forward now to Tuesday, December 8th, 1987. At 3:30, a school bus drops off 2 young children on Sanders Road in Townsend, Massachusetts.
Close by.
Yes. And one of them is 7-year-old Abby Gustafson. And she says goodbye to her neighbor that got off the bus with her. But this is kind of a rural road. Mm-hmm. And the houses are set back, like kind of deep in the woods. It's one of those situations where they have the big long driveway and you can't even like really see the house.
Yeah, most of the area there is like that.
Yeah. So she's saying goodbye to her neighbor, and she walks down the long wooded driveway leading to her home that she shares with her little brother, 5-year-old William, and her parents, 32-year-old Andrew, and his 33-year-old wife, Priscilla, also known as Scylla, who was 3 months pregnant at the time.
Oh, well.
A short time later, the neighbor girl claims that she heard a scream coming from the direction of Abby's house.
Uh-oh.
Around this same time, Andrew Gustafson, the father, who was at work in his law firm, was calling home and trying to get a hold of his wife. He'd had a long but successful day at court, and he wanted to celebrate. He attempted to call home at 3:30 to ask Priscilla to try and get a babysitter for the night so the two of them could go out for the evening, but no one answered.
No.
Figuring they must have gone out to run some errands, once the children got home from school, Andrew wasn't overly concerned, but his concern grew as the day went on, and he attempted further calls without getting an answer.
Oh, the time before cell phones, too.
So finally, at 5 p.m., he left the office to go home. When he arrived about a half hour later, he was surprised to see his wife's car was in the driveway, so she should be home. But if so, why had she not answered the phone? And why were there no lights on in the house?
For something good?
Yeah, well, 5 o'clock on a December evening, it's going to be dark.
Yep.
So you would want some lights on.
Yep.
So Andrew begins to get worried. The Gustafson home had been burglarized a few weeks earlier, so the family was already on edge. Andrew entered the home and called out to his wife and children, but got no answer.
Oh, no.
Still, not wanting to assume the worst, he called the family's neighbor/babysitter, thinking that maybe Priscilla and the children had just walked over there for a visit. When he learned that the family was not at the babysitter's, he turned on the house lights and went from room to room calling out the names of his wife and children.
God.
In the upstairs bedroom, quote, I saw my wife lying face down on the bed.
Fuck.
She was lifeless and had the gray pallor of death on her hands and her feet.
Jesus Christ.
Priscilla Gustafson's hands and feet were bare, but her head was covered by a pillowcase and surrounded by 3 pillows. Andrew noticed bullet holes in a pillow over her head.
What?
Afraid of what he might find, he did not search the rest of the house. Instead, he went back downstairs and called the police. The first officer to respond, Townsend Patrolman John W. Johns, with very unimaginative parents,
Johns. Go on. Not funny.
Testified that he had found Gustafson distraught, wringing his hands, pacing, and kicking the kitchen cabinets. John examined Priscilla Gustafson's body but found no pulse, he said, and then he went back and sat down with Mr. Gustafson to try and calm him down. When fellow officers arrived, Officer Johns began to search the house. In the upstairs bathroom, in a dry tub, he found the body of William, who had just turned 5 a month earlier.
Oof.
Downstairs, in a second bathroom, in a tub containing 4 inches of water, Johns found the body of 7-year-old Abigail.
What the fuck?
While William's body was neatly clothed, Abigail's clothes were in disarray, and her body had bruises and scratches all over.
Oh, great.
Eventually, police came up with a theory of how the crime took place. The killer, most likely the same person who had burglarized their home earlier, had somehow gained entry into the home and surprised Priscilla and William. At gunpoint, he ordered Priscilla upstairs into the bedroom, where he tied her to her bed using her husband's neckties and her pantyhose.
What the fucking fuck?
He then ordered William into the bathroom, where he strangled him to death and left him in the tub. He returned to Priscilla, ripped off her clothing, and sexually assaulted her.
Jesus Christ.
The attacker used condoms, and he'd left a used one on the bedroom floor, but the tip where the semen would pool was cut off and was not at the crime scene.
What the fuck?
There was also another opened condom wrapper, but no second condom was found.
Okay.
Then he ordered Priscilla to put on a different outfit and lay down on the bed. He placed two pillows over her head and shot her twice. Sometime shortly after this, Abigail came home and was confronted by the killer. Apparently, the 7-year-old fought for her life, causing the bruises and scratches on her body, But
Wow.
in the end, the killer was able to overpower her and strangled her while holding her face down in the shallow bath water in the downstairs bathroom.
Okay.
2 open beers were set out at the crime scene, though it did not appear that either had been drunk from.
Okay, weird.
Pages of a pornographic magazine had been crumpled and tossed into a wastebasket.
This is just...
We already talked about the used condom that was found next to the bed.
Uh-huh.
And there were other condom wrappers that were open, but no other condoms were found. And there were several unopened condoms also found in the bedroom.
What?
After they found a footprint outside, police called headquarters asking for a tracking dog. At about 1 a.m. on December 2nd, troopers arrived with a dog whose name happened to be Mike. Mike sniffed a pillowcase from the crime scene, and then he immediately began pulling officers into the woods behind the house.
Okay.
Because this, like I said, was a heavily wooded area.
Sure.
And the dog was very excited. They basically had to like run to keep up with the dog because he smelled whatever he smelled so strong.
Yeah.
But it was very dark out. And so when the dog got to the creek, kind of that was back in the woods, they said, all right, let's wait till we get some daylight and we'll come back with the dog. So the next day, they resumed the search with a second dog named Spike.
Spike and Spike. All right. Sure.
Nice. Spike led them to a pair of soaking wet gloves and a blue and white plaid shirt. Wrapped inside the plaid shirt was a decorative wooden sign that read, "The Gustafsons."
What?
From there, Spike led police almost directly to the back door of the LaPlante family home.
Holy moly.
Because this house, the Gustafson house and the LaPlante house, were located on streets that ran parallel to each other. And there was about a half-mile strip of woods between the two houses.
Uh-huh.
But they were basically like right across from each other.
Right. Jesus.
But Danny is in this juvenile mental health facility, right?
Oh, he's still there during this time, or supposed to be?
He was supposed to have been, because his trial was only coming up right around this time. He was supposed to going into trial. But the courts had decided that due to his past and the seriousness of his crimes, he wouldn't be tried as a juvenile. He would be tried as an adult.
Okay.
So that meant instead of being held in the juvenile detention center, he was moved to a regular adult jail, and as such, he had to be given the opportunity to post bail.
For fuck's sake.
LaPlante's mother, Elaine Moore, she'd been remarried, so they don't have the same last name, remortgaged her house to get the $10,000 bail money.
Didn't want to leave him in there, lady? No?
He was, he was in fact out.
Fucking hell. Great job all around, everybody.
All right, so that's where we're gonna pause our story, and we're gonna pick it up next time. But Emily, what are your thoughts so far?
Well, you told me I was gonna hear a fucked up story, and I'll be damned if you haven't delivered. It, honest to God, it sounds completely made up. Like,
right?
It's preposterous. It sounds
that's
like
what I was thinking.
Script that you'd get for like a horror movie or a thriller movie, and be like, okay, come on though, but really?
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking when, they. Sorry, I didn't realize you couldn't see me this whole time. That's what I was thinking when I was watching this on Your Worst Nightmare. I was like, this isn't true, and especially it happened in Massachusetts, and I don't know about it. Like, this is kind of my thing. Like, what the hell, I
was in Pepperell yesterday, like literally there yesterday.
Yeah, so we're gonna keep talking about it on the next episode. So join us then. I won't do a remixed episode in between. We'll go right into the second part of this story. So remember, tell your friends, share the show, visit the website, spookyas.com, spookyasshit.com. And thank you, Emily.
Yeah, I'm going to go lock my door real quick.
Yeah, and until next time, don't be afraid.